Hey, welcome to Q&A, where you ask your questions on faith and life, and I do my best to give a biblical perspective. So let's jump into today's question. We're doing an extra one this week just to try and catch up. Probably do this over the next few weeks just to try and catch up on the questions that you've been asking while I was off. So what does 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verses 5 to 6 mean? Well, before I get into it, I think that it's a useful thing that I think is always important for us to remember is that when we're going to look at a verse or two, it's always best to interpret it in the context of its setting. Always seek to not just analyze a verse or two, but the bigger picture in which this verse is located. In this context, the passage begins in 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 12, and it finishes in chapter 3, verse 6. And really it's about Paul is writing to address the challenge that's being made directly to him, but also indirectly about him to others, that he doesn't carry credentials or letters of recommendation from the proper synagogue leaders or the religious leaders of the day, and therefore he's not to be trusted. He's got nothing of substance, that he's just trying to lead people astray. And he responds to these allegations, to these accusations, if you will, by saying that it's not the outward things that qualify a person, the credentials that they carry, the letters of recommendation that qualifies people to serve the gospel. Rather, it's the grace of God at work in their lives that is evident for people to see, the fruit, if you will. That's what qualifies people. You see, there's a difference between information and transformation. The law informs us that we're sinners, but it's only through repentance, through the new covenant, through grace, that we are transformed. You see, the law was not given to give life. No one was saved by the law. Only the new covenant, only grace can do that. And that's why he writes in verses 1 and 2 of chapter 3, says, "Are we like others who need to bring you letters of recommendation, or who ask you to write such letters on their behalf? No, the only letter of recommendation we need is you yourselves. Your lives are a letter written in our hearts. Everyone can read it and recognize our good work among you." In other words, he's saying, if you want to know what qualifies us, or if we are qualified, look at the way your lives have been transformed by the message of grace. The law couldn't do that. So ignore those people who are telling you to obey the law. And look at the lives of people who have been touched by the gospel. Let that be the letter of recommendation. Let that be which qualifies me, that legitimizes my message. That's why when we come to verses 3 and 5, which you've asked about, where it says it's not that we think we're qualified to do anything on our own. Our qualification comes from God. He has enabled us to be ministers of his new covenant. This is a covenant not of written laws, but of the Spirit. The old written covenant ends in death, but under the new covenant, the Spirit gives life. What he's saying there is that what qualifies us is not the credentials we carry, or that we've crossed every theological T and every theological I, but it's the call and grace of God. It's not the old covenant, it's the new covenant that's at work in our lives. And it's a transformed life, a life shaped by the gospel of grace, that is what matters. He said, what enables us is not the law, because the law is dead. What enables us is the Spirit of God at work transforming our lives, and as a consequence, allowing us to be ministers of the new covenant. And he's saying it's not just for me, it's for all of us. And so really what he's doing is he's pushing back against this idea that it's about knowledge and everything else. In fact, in a prior letter to the church in Corinth, in chapter 8, verses 1 to 2, he talks about how knowledge makes us feel self-important, but it doesn't mean that we have right standing before God. What qualifies us, what counts, is a life that reflects the gospel of grace. So that's what it's about. That's what he's pushing back against. I hope it clarifies it for you. As always, if you've got thoughts, comments, why not post them down below? But you can always ask your questions on Faith and Life on Slotter.com. Would love to hear from you. Use the hashtag ALC23. But that's it for now. Until next time, God bless.